Okay. So, how to break down text basically is what we're going to look at. So, pages 153 and 154 of your book, I had to actually spend most of my time trying to figure out which pages they were because, just give you all this out. It's ours, yes. But the page numbers that they had in the book on the PowerPoint must have been connected to an old book. Because when I went to the pages, they were not right. So I spent some time finding them. I believe this is for pages 153 and 154 in your SciOp book, which is chapter 5. So just as a review, I'll let you read through. It's just those, 3-4 paragraphs. Read through that and we'll have a conversation here about academic language. Okay, so just as a review, all teachers are responsible for students' learning content and developing academic language. Not only is quantity of exposure important, but quality is too. Mere exposure to language is not enough. Students need to use or practice academic language and vocabulary. Students, especially ELs, receive the least amount of practice time using academic language and vocabulary in large group settings. So these are the things that we're going to sort of hone in on. Okay, how can we make their quality of exposure better? How can we make sure that they're practicing or using it? And how can we establish groups? Okay, that's one of the expectations on the rubric. Is it's asking you how are you grouping them if you're doing activities in small groups? And small groups are going to always be the best setting. I know I've had classes of 30, 35 kids, and it doesn't matter how you group them. there's too many kids in the room to do anything really productive. So that's obviously just a hurdle that we have to work with, but keeping that in the back of your mind.
You know, when they say, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
When they say small group, how many? What's like
There's
the
different
preference?
opinions on that. Like, I think the perfect group is going to be 3 to 5.
Okay.
You never want. I don't like having even numbers because it creates the his and her. Like, you have the one person that's always working and the one person that's always copying is what it feels like. That was something, I don't know what my history of teacher taught me, I think, was that the odd number groups are better because you're creating, you can establish the groups and you can give them their responsibilities. You know, somebody's always the writer, somebody's always the reader, somebody's always the summarizer, somebody's always, so you can add that dynamic to things. Any more than 5, you're going to start losing people, I feel like, because you have.
I'm just thinking of when I like when you're reading though, like in small groups and like discussing the text.
I would probably say 3 would be a pretty good sized group. If you have 5, you have the opportunity to let them pass, like if you're having them and they want to pass, I don't know if you guys allow them to do, if you're doing like sentences or paragraphs and things like that. I know with the older kids, in my Tower Time class, a lot of times if we're popcorn reading or something like that, because we'll read like a novel, if a student wants to take a pass on something, they can. I also try and let them know ahead of time, hey, I'm going to have you read this paragraph or this sentence so they can kind of prepare for it. But that would be in a larger group setting. I don't know. What else? What do you guys think? Do you have more success?
Like,
3 to 5 is really the ideal. Anything bigger than 5 is getting to be too big.
Like I just like wonder, because I know next year we're gonna have to do small groups because we're changing our reading curriculum. Like, how do you take an instruction time like core, like reading core, and establish small groups for reading? Where you're interacting with the students as they discuss it.
Yeah.
Like I have my kids basically split in half. Like
How big
half,
is your class?
Not very big.
Not very big.
15.
So you're kind of, that's an awkward number then. So
Yeah,
you've
it
either
is an
got,
awkward number.
I would make 5 groups of 3 though. If I had 15 kids in a class,
Yeah.
I would make 5 groups of 3.
instead of 3 groups of 5.
Yeah.
Because I think even 5 is too many.
Yeah, I really like 3s personally.
I'm a 4 person. Like we're potted. Like my room is potted in 4s, so 4 people in each pod, and I think that works really well because even if 2 people group off, you're still having a discussion and they can re-intertwine.
So do you have your kids like in their group of 3s, like you would like assign like a reading or something, and like walk around and monitor and pick up on their conversation? My issue is just so hard because it's just like some of my kids just can't.
Focus.
Self-monitor. 'Cause
Yeah,
They can't, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, now at this time of the year it's a lot better, but like at the beginning it's just
A struggle.
mess. Yeah.
It's a struggle in high school
Yeah,
too.
I was gonna say it doesn't get a
It's-
whole lot better.
Yeah, freshmen aren't any better.
Yeah, without a shadow of doubt. But I really drill into my freshmen, especially my freshmen, that this is what we're doing. This is your behavior, and you can behave in my class, or we're gonna have an issue. And it took it probably took a good solid month of me.
Yeah,
being
you're
a
establishing
bitch.
your norms and things like that. Like I said, the perfect group size, I don't know. Like, that was, again, something that somebody drilled into me, and that's why I'm comfortable with those group sizes. When you get into partners, there's a comfort level, or there's a discomfort level. With third person, it just feels like it's less awkward for some reason, especially when you get into high school. So you don't have, unless you've got 2 people that are really good friends, then you have like the third wheel. Instead of having the dominant and the recessive is what I always find with my kids. You have the one person who does all the work and the one person who sort of follows. Unless you're very, very careful with how you build your groups, and you put all your strong ones together, and you put your weaker ones together, but then you take that chance of having this weaker group that can't do anything because they don't have any direction. So, I always have tried to make sure that they have tasks. So, however if you number them off, or you give them ABCs, or you color code them, whatever you're doing in the reading group itself. If you're taking turns reading, again, if you're adding that speaking, so person A reads, person B is gonna summarize what person A read, person C is going to add or take away. I know if you're reading a story, you're not gonna be doing, you want them to be reading so that they're getting the story. But I still think adding that speaking dynamic would help break it up a little bit. But once they're in their group, say if you got your ABC or your 1, 2, 3, person one's going to read this paragraph. You can kind of forewarn them that's what they're going to read as well. I don't know if does that help make sense? So if I've got an 8-paragraph story that we're reading, or an article that we're reading, you're going to read paragraph 1 and 3. Ahead of time, you can pre-read it. For high school kids, sometimes that takes some of the stress off of them. That, if you're number 1, you're always going to read these paragraphs, or you're always going to start reading first, and then, I don't know. With your low readers, whatever advantage you can give them is going to make them feel more secure in their reading, especially if they're reading out loud. It depends on your tasks, I guess. Sorry, I'm rambling. So differentiating, and we're going to get into some different differentiation here, but just as a side note, so I gave you also the pages, page 209 and 210 talks to you about the pacing of the lesson, elementary, middle, and the pace, how recognizing the attention span of your student. Okay. From freshmen to seniors, it's very different,
Very different.
right?
Yeah.
From kindergarten to 2nd or 3rd grade is going to be very different. Middle school, I don't know, 7th, 8th graders, they're kind of all squirrely, I think, in there. But I do have friends who teach middle school, and they're like, oh, nobody wants the 6th graders, everybody wants the 8th graders, because the 8th graders are a lot more focused. So.
And then they become freshmen, and
They
lost
revert,
everything.
yeah. They
They
all revert
forget
back to
how
being
to
like pre-K almost, just incapable of focusing at all. So when you differentiate, this is one of those moments where it's strongly encouraged, because it's kind of already laid out for you, to jump back to those ELP standards. So just as a review, and did I send this out to everyone, or did I just send it out to a few of you? I cannot remember. This website, this ELPA21.org, is the best one I found and the most user-friendly.
Is that the one that's on the Kansas State Department?
I don't know, because
Yeah.
the one on the Kansas State
Yeah,
Department I
it's-
can never find.
It is.
Okay.
Is it? Okay.
They changed that website just enough every single time that I can never, you go back and you think you're gonna, it's like the College Board website. They change it just enough, and I can't ever find the link you're supposed to click on. So,
I couldn't find
it's just ELPA21.org, and it's all the standards.
Oh, yep, it's the same one.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I have this printed out, these pages right here printed out. I don't know, what is it, page 4? So here are all of your ELP standards. Okay? It breaks it down and it talks to you, 1 through 7. This is the content-specific practices. And then you come down to 10, and this is, 8 through 10 are going to hone in on more the, they call it the micro-level linguistic features. But determine the meaning, create clear and coherent, grade-appropriate speech and text, make accurate use of standard English to communicate. So these I feel like are more subjective, so maybe more difficult to tackle. But what I do like down here is it breaks it down into modalities and domains. And so I finally figured out the difference between modality and domain. I knew I'd read it somewhere, but I could never remember how. So modality becomes receptive, productive, or interactive. And so the domains then, if you're in the receptive modality, you're listening and reading. So you're taking in, right? Productive is speaking and writing, and then the interactive can be any of the four. Now, they've also broken down the 8 corresponding ELP standards, so how they correlate with the specific domains. So this is if you want the kids to do something specific, they're going to read, okay? You know you're going to be addressing ELP, the standard 1 and 8. Okay? As a reference. So as you're writing your lesson plans, oh, they're going to read. Okay, so I know that we're going to focus on either 1 or 8. We're going to be talking about those standards. Okay? And then, of course, they break them down. And again, it gives you almost an idea of what you can do with the kids. They're not giving you lessons, but they are giving you some ideas of what to do. So wherever you are, right, there's always the 10 standards. So you've got your kindergarten 1 through 10, first, second, and then they break down into some more specific as you get the higher you go. Okay. I've got the practice matrix. And that's what these are. So again, here are your standards. It's telling you what it is that you're doing. So for science practices, math. So it breaks it down in 100 different ways, I feel like. But those first two, page 4 and page 5, are I think probably when you're lesson planning going to be the most helpful. All right, differentiating by content. Begin with the same objectives and essential. Question, topic, not the same groups always. So you're going to want to make sure that your groups are being mixed up. Put your highs and your lows together. Sometimes you're going to put all your highs together and all your lows together. Depends on what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Audio support. I know with English, a lot of the books are on tape or CD. That's awesome. So then the kids can hear it. Okay, they can hear. I've read books out loud in class, like novels. We read The Maze Runner, and I was hoarse by the end of the book because it's a long book to read out loud for 30 minutes at a time. Text with key portions highlighted. That's a really great differentiation. So if you have a long text, I do this a lot of times. I'll take what I would give to my AP government kids and I give it to my regular government kids. Same primary source documents, where my AP kids may get the whole document, and the expectation is they know how to analyze it. If I'm giving it to my regular class, my CWSC, I may go in and give them the whole document so they can still see it, because I think for them to see everything in context is important, but I'm going to highlight exactly what I want them to read. They don't have to dig through all of it, because sometimes the language is so heavy that just reading the Constitution, just chunking out the specific sections instead of having them read the whole Constitution, which I say whole, it's not that long. But guided notes, partially completed graphic organizers, starting for them, especially at the beginning, giving them how do you want the graphic organizer to look. Sometimes it is, you may think it's very clear. You may have been very explicit with your instructions, and they still interpreted it completely different than what you wanted them to do. And of course, word banks, illustrations, very material by interest. So, what would this look like for content? Use story read in class. Use words to complete the Venn diagram. So I give them the Venn diagram and I give them the words. If you've got an activity that you repeat, give them a Venn diagram on a magnet and give them the words, and they can move the words around. Or a dry erase board, they can erase it on the board. Okay? Have them do something very basic. Explain one way things are alike and one way that they are different. They don't have to use complete sentences necessarily. You're just asking them to do that comparison piece. That's a higher level thinking skill. If you want to step it up, same thing. Choice of stories. Read with a partner to complete the Venn diagram. So you are letting them choose the story, you're letting them read, and they're going to complete the Venn diagram. Complete sentences to explain important ways they are alike and different. You can still give them sentence frames. Sentence frames are always a good point, especially for not just language learners. I'm the kind of person, I need a place to start. in advance, then have them summarize how the stories are similar and different. So we move from how are they alike and different to summarize how the stories are alike and different. Okay? You could be asking them to identify the characters' names. One story has a boy, one story has a girl. One story is about a frog, one story is about a dog. Very basic. And that's okay, because they're just identifying the basic information. But when you get into the complete sentences, right, you're asking them for more information. Okay, how do you know it's X? Or how do you know it's Y? I don't, you guys use top hats? Because I meant to ask Leslie before she left what the best way to use this is. Anybody use top hat? I've looked it up, I've looked in all the books, all the resources, and I cannot find
Is
anything
that like a comparison?
that shows me. It's a comparison, yeah, it is, but topic 1, topic 2, and the criteria. I assume that, so if I'm looking at World War I and World War II, and I'm looking at the criteria, technology of World War I and World War II. This is how I would use it. Okay? So, I have my criteria in the middle of my technology. So topic 1 is World War I, topic 2 is World War II. I'm looking for differences, and at the bottom I would put my similarities. It's just a very explicit Venn diagram is what it feels like.
In the middle is the differences?
In the middle is the criteria. So topic 1, under topic 1, whatever my topic 1 is, maybe, like I said, that's so instead of topic 1 it would say World War I, topic 2 would be World War II. So in the middle I would say technology. So in topic 1 for World War I would say poisonous gas, trench warfare.
Gotcha.
World War II I would say
Planes.
planes, nuclear bombs, atomic bombs, and then on the bottom, the both would be my what similarities do they have? Okay, it's like I said, it's just basically a Venn diagram. It's just that is how in my head it worked out. Like I said, I could not find an example in any of the books that I have, and I forgot to ask Leslie. But that's showing differentiation. So you know the level of the criteria could be more simple. Again, if you're doing 2 stories or you're doing 2 topics, you could do something very simple. You know, it could be a horse and a frog. What differences do they have? You know, where do they live? Environment, food, those kinds of things. Differentiation, the process. So we talked about content, this is process. Directions are more detailed, specific for learners, more open for others. So when you're a language learner, you're more worried about making sure that you have the words spelled correctly and the words are in the appropriate places. With your higher level kids, you give them a little bit more interpretive pieces for whatever that they are doing. That didn't make very good sense. That was very poor English on my part. Does that make sense though? So the more specific you are, and it might be that you give them directions for every couple of sentences, right? I want you to do this here, and then I want you to do this here, and I want you to do this here. I always try and give them instructions at the beginning of the hour, and then I put them up on the board, and then we stop periodically and we go over the instructions again. Sometimes I feel like I'm feeding their disconnect, because they know I'm going to explain it to them again, so they don't have to pay attention this time. Resource material at varied levels. We're very fortunate. I have access, I guess, but in our resource room we have lots of old textbooks, so you can give them all kinds of different levels of reading. Sometimes you have to be creative and figure out what level they're written at, like whether they're a freshman level book versus a senior level book. Or an AP level book, college level, but that gives them that wide array. You can also with the internet find just about anything. Sometimes you have to get creative. I've rewritten the Declaration of Independence virtually for my really low learners. That was one of the activities that we talked about, was the Declaration of Independence and the Revolutionary War. And so there is nothing wrong with you rewriting the text, even if it's a primary source, as long as they know that you have rewritten it, that this is your, this is a different interpretation of the words. So as long as they understand that, they're still getting the main idea of the document. Because I know when I first started teaching, it freaked me out, because I was like, well, the Declaration of Independence is the Declaration of Independence. You can't mess with the Declaration of Independence. But a lot of people can't read the Declaration of Independence because they don't understand what, what those words mean. So find access to them if you need to. Varying the pace. There is nothing wrong with saying, this is due tomorrow, this is due next week. Giving understanding that he can get through it in a day, you may need more time. Okay? That makes it really fun as a teacher to keep track of all the assignments and figure out when everything is due. That's why for social studies teachers, we're really good at doing units. Have the unit to turn stuff in. Vary criteria for success. An A for him may not look like an A for you. That's why rubrics are really handy, because when you're reading the rubric, the rubrics reflect the ability of the student. I know that he can do X, Y, Z, and I know that she can do X, Y, Z. And so his 4 and her 4 may not look the same on paper, but they're receiving based on, right? That was one of the things I found interesting when we first started doing DBQs. You could write a paragraph and still score relatively well on a rubric. You may not get all the points in the grade book, but can you show me that you understand the concepts? Can you show me that you can summarize? Or whatever the expectation is, can I see that in a paragraph? Yes. I know that's how long, it took you a whole class period to write a paragraph, and it took him a whole class period to write 5 paragraphs. So, recognizing that they're not all going to look the same, you're going to do all the even problems. Nothing wrong with that. Are they getting the practice? Are they getting the application? You don't want to keep them there. You want them to eventually be where the rest of the class is. But if I know it's going to take this student twice as long because they have to basically break down the whole sentence or the text every single time, nothing wrong with that. You just have to be you have to be discreet, and you have to have conversations. I know with elementary kids it might be a little more difficult. I don't know. Do they pay attention to what the other students are doing? Is that something that they're cognizant of? Do you think? Yeah.
They are.
So if they see someone who has less work, or they perceive that they have more work,
they would surprise you how perceptive they are.
do they get angry? Do they feel like they're being cheated, or do you think that most of them understand why?
I think because we talk a lot about just empathy and like understanding others, and just because like I have an autistic kid in my class, and they understand, I think they get it. We just talk a lot about how fair is everyone getting what they need, not everyone getting what they want. So
How about in high school? What do you guys think?
I almost think little kids maybe understand it better.
Better?
Sometimes.
Yeah,
Just kind of go with whatever you say, like, oh, she's a teacher,
Yeah,
she knows
she
everything.
knows what she's talking about. Have you guys run into any problems with kids who feel like they're being given more work, or somebody's getting less work, or do you guys even differentiate at that level, do you think?
I know a lot of the gifted kids have a lot more trouble with understanding why they have to do things. Like, why is this a C for me, but if somebody else turned it in, it would be an A. Like, I hear a lot of kids in the gifted program talking about how much more work that they have to do. In my class, I don't even think people realize that there are differing things going on ever. I don't think they care.
I wondered about that. I mean, sometimes I have class, same thing. I have kids sometimes where they're clearly like, how come? I'm like, well, first of all, what they got on their paper is none of your business. Because they'll get their papers back out and they'll be like, Miss. I'm like, what? That's none of your business, what he got on his paper. But yeah, and it'll be that. Sometimes I'll tell a student, do all the evens, or do all the odds, or I want, you have this much time. And you'll have a kid who will ask, and it's, at high school, I don't have a problem saying, that's none of your business. If you want to talk about it, I would be more than happy to talk to you about it after class. But for the most part, I have found that a lot of them.
I think going back to what you said, it's like the higher level kids that
They're the
notice,
ones who
and they
struggle.
wanna, shift the responsibility.
They're so
and-
hyper aware.
Yeah.
And they want to do absolutely their best, usually, right? They want to do the best. And so I'm sure my son, to a certain extent, he struggled with that. Sometimes he felt like he was getting more work.
Well, and sometimes I think kids get stuck on the idea of fair.
Fair.
Well, that's not fair. Well, I don't think it's necessarily fair that you have an IQ of
Yeah.
180 and you're using the brain power of somebody who has an IQ of 40.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's easier to make they're always like, oh, well, I have to do more work because I'm smarter. Well, yeah, that's the whole point of school is
To learn, to challenge. Yeah.
and if you're not being challenged, then we're not doing our jobs.
Yeah. Well, I always tell them fair's a place to take hogs in the spring. So, and then they look at you and don't really appreciate my humor, but that's why I say, and then then you have that conversation because I think a lot of them are old enough to appreciate it. And I tell them at the very beginning, guys, again, what your neighbor's doing is not really any of your business. You may see some of your neighbors have more work or less work. It's not relevant to you. Use sentence frames in a word bank to write 3 sentences. This is a process, right? So tier activity, low, 3 sentences, word bank, sentence stems, very structured. You're going to, for an immediate, take a little bit of that away. Describe the cause and effect and possible solutions. You can still give them sentence frames. You can still give them like words that you want them to focus in on, right? Cause and effect. Cause and effect, the atomic bomb. Drop the atomic bomb on Japan. Cause and effect. Give them some key words, right? Throw out some terms that they can use. They'll feel more confident when they write. And then advance, present a convincing argument. When we're looking at the Costas or we're looking at the Blooms, as long as you're still you're still putting them into the same level, okay? This is all, this is all application. It's not the same level of application, right? He's writing a sentence talking about environmental issues in the rainforest. But he's applying the knowledge that he's gained to write these sentences. Describes the cause and effect. That is application. Presenting convincing argument. That is application. That is applying what they've learned. So you're pulling them up, but you still, just because you're a low language learner does not mean you don't have the context. And then differentiation by product. Begin with the same objective and essential question topic, not the same groups always. Okay, so offer varied mediums, product options. We used to do something, what was it called? I don't remember what the process was called. But the kids basically, they would get a worksheet and it would have, if you want to achieve an A, these are all the things that you have to do. If you want to be, so it was kind of a menu. And so it had lots of different options on it. So the kids who were strong visual learners, they could, they had to read and take notes. That was like a very basic. And then to get to the C, you added something. And so you tried to add something that was, for kinesthetic learners, so they could build a model, they could build a diorama or something. And somebody who was didn't like to do that kind of stuff, someone who just liked to write, they could write an essay. Or your third person, they wanted to do a PowerPoint presentation, or they wanted to speak, they wanted to give a presentation, they could do I guess it'd be auditory. But you could give them those different levels. I cannot think what that strategy was called now off the top of my head. But these are great. Again, if you do like the dance cards we talked about last week, or when you sort of determine where the kids, some like to write, some like to draw, some like to speak. If you know that in advance, as you're building up your curriculum, as you're building up your lessons, your final products, you can give them different choices. They don't all have to do the same thing. It's really fun as a teacher trying to figure out how to grade that. I'm not going to lie. You have to be creative sometimes. Okay, this kid is writing a 5-paragraph essay that uses this rubric. This kid's creating a diorama of World War I. Again, equitability is not, is that even a word? The equity of the project has to be firm. You have to be able to give them very specific instructions. But a choice board, I guess is what they're calling it here. It's a great way for kids to express themselves. It's a great way for them to, use their strengths. Offer varied prompts. If you're talking about World War I, you could do a technology one, and they could all pick different technology. It works really well for social studies. English, I feel like you could do different books, novels, and things like that, and final products.
I had my kids do like research for Romeo and Juliet, and they had different types like that. Like their group could do a PowerPoint, their group could do like where you create a new like play script, or like I had a group build the diorama of the globe.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. This is great for our L's because if they are not a strong language learner, but they have they want to express, you're going to be using the language all the way throughout the curriculum. This kind of gives them the affirmation that their other strengths can be utilized. Opportunities for independent inquiry, again, give them different resources to look. Notes, textbooks, online, primary sources, web quests. I love web quests, especially if they're already set up. I've tried to set a couple up, and I never do get all the kinks worked out. But they become like you have to complete this to get to here, and you have to complete this to get to here. Another thing that's really great that we utilized a lot of times with this strategy when we were building this curriculum was we had what were called verbal defenses. So let's say one of the steps was that they had to read and take notes over a certain section. They had to read chapter 4, section 2. They had to read and take notes. And then they had to do a verbal defense. Instead of having them just take a written quiz, they came up and you asked them the questions, and they had to verbally defend the fact that they took the notes. So I may highlight certain things out of the text that I want them to be able to, what year, who did, how, what were the components to. And that gives you, again, speaking. They're listening because they have to listen to what your question is, and they're pulling out their knowledge from whatever it is that they read, or watched a video, or had a conversation. Develop rubrics or other benchmarks. Rubrics are really, really important because they give them the feedback that is very difficult for us to do otherwise. They know, okay, you are in the 2. Here are all the things you did really, really well. So if you want a 3, here's what it looks like. You need to do these things to get to the 3, or get to the 4, or 5, or however many, how many ever benchmarks you want them to address. Every student understands rubrics. They understand, I'm here, I want to get here, or I'm here and I want to stay here. The problem with rubrics is, like all of the things, it's an extra set of things that you have to do. Rubrics do not translate directly into a grade. I have been teaching for 14 years and I still don't have a perfect way to translate a rubric grade into an actual grade. So when we do the DBQs, they get a rubric score because that's what they want, the data, and then I have to figure out how to score it and give them a point value to put into the gradebook.
So your report cards are just by grade, A, B, C, D. Ours is rubric.
Is it,
Makes it pretty nice.
we're going there.
Yeah,
I think with the
Algebra 1's
scales-
going there.
They're gonna introduce the scales, which are not rubrics, I understand, but they are going to, I think,
Yeah.
make the grading process.
Mhm.
If we didn't have to put in an ABCD, if we didn't have to have a letter grade, and I don't know what that's gonna look like at the high school level, because they need that GPA.
Standards-based.
Yeah, we're going to that standards based. How does that translate to college? Because they're still going to be looking at that grade point average. And I don't know how, just by what we've looked at, I don't know how standards based is going to translate into GPA.
Are your standards changing next year? That's everyone, right?
The math ones did.
Yeah, they're all going to be adjusted. I don't know how much, because ours were relatively,
Ours had some major changes in it.
ours were just, I'm trying to think of how long ago it was. We just went through a big shift, because our DBQ changed, and then our, they're writing our IUGs based on them right now, so,
That's what we're doing.
yeah. I love it. I think that veteran teachers who don't want to do the shift are gonna struggle with it, because and if they continue, like you said, if they continue to make us have that grade in the grade book that reflects a point value and that translates into a GPA, that means we're gonna be we're gonna be grading everything twice. And I don't know, that's where the
I know
struggle's gonna
next
be.
year for our department, we're just doing Algebra 1 standards based. The rest of our classes are still gonna translate to a grade,
A grade.
but we're testing it out on Algebra 1.
But I mean, the feedback is phenomenal, right? I mean, you give a kid back a worksheet, you got 34 out of 40. Okay. What does that mean? Okay, now you gotta go back and you look at the ones you missed. Then you go back and you fix it. At least with the scale, you have the feedback automatically, what I've looked at. And I think that's going to help in terms of having a more, what am I trying to say? The students being able, the teachers and the students being able to recognize what the standards are. I think it's gonna force teachers to teach, not to the standard, but to utilize the standard to build their curriculum. Because when they get, I just, like I said, I don't know how it's all gonna mesh together, but I think the end result is gonna be great for students. Because the feedback that they're gonna get is instantaneous. I mean, it's automatic. You know, based on that scale, where you are on that particular standard. So, but we're still in that weird transition phase, and that they don't translate at all right now.
How can you do better if you're not getting that
Exactly, that
You
feedback.
don't really know what you're doing.
Exactly. Because everything right now is
No, we
based
can
on a
evaluate
point,
it. Marzano.
right? So, but how do you, like I said, I mean, everything we do is based on points right now. And so the kids know, oh, I don't have to do that assignment because I don't really need those points because I already have that grade. Well, if you don't do that assignment, then you're not getting that information, whatever that.
Oh, that's so true. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, it's a numbers game. And especially with seniors, like, what do I need
Oh
to
yeah,
do?
for sure. They're terrible.
What do I need to do?
That's what it sounds like. My friend teaches math at Valley, and she says kids will don't turn in any homework, and they'll go up at the end of the quarter and be like, "What can I do?"
Yeah, well, you should have turned in your assignments.
I
But
tell
again-
kids if they do that, I'm gonna laugh in their face. Because they'll have like a 30%.
And they don't understand the value, you know, so then the discussion is, do you let them turn it in late? Well, I'd really like them to do the assignment because the assignment has value. It's not just about the points. Well, but what are we teaching them by allowing them to turn the lessons in? You know,
I think the problem with all of that is that we would have to systematically do things exactly the same way, because I think a lot of our kids struggle with one teacher will accept late work, the
Oh, yeah.
other doesn't,
Yep.
and then they get to a point where they don't even know who's accepting it at this point. And I think the only way we would be able to not accept late work is if every teacher in the school systematically did it.
well, but administration's telling us that's not the way we do things here.
Yeah,
So when administration tells you, even if you are the teacher that stands firm on the no late policy, you're not getting any support.
Right.
Cause then counselors will email you.
Right. Yeah. What
What
can
can
the
the
student do to
senior
give
do?
yeah.
And I
And-
accept late work, and it's
Yeah.
like,
Well, and that's and I've I had to have a philosophical conversation with myself. What is the point of the work? Is it the points? I mean, because we're just buying into the whole point thing. I need 180 points to get an A.
They're doing all that math to figure out
Right.
what their grade could be.
It
yeah,
is.
but they can't add
Doing
5
their
plus
math.
2.
They
like-
do. I know. Or is the value, well, you really need to read this document and analyze this document because it's going to be on the test.
Yeah.
You need to have the skill to, so I'm teaching them the content. I'm also teaching them the skill of analysis because you're going to need to understand how to analyze things, and this is practicing that skill. So there's 2 reasons why I should accept the assignment, but I'm really peeved at you right now because you didn't do the assignment, so I want to punish you for not doing the assignment, so I'm not going to take these, it's,
Right, and it's April 23rd, and
Yeah.
you slacked off till now.
I don't know, I feel like I'm trapped in, you guys, The Princess Bride, the conversation with the Sicilian, right?
Yeah.
That's I feel like I'm having that conversation with kids sometimes. I know that you know that I know that you are not doing your homework. Tiered activity ideas. So again, this is just another example of this assignment, this strategy that I, for the life of me, still can't think of. Represent a historical point of view using a primary source document. That is the goal. That is what I want them to do. Here are 6 different ways that you can do that assignment. I mean, how awesome would it be able to say, hey, you can do 2. You can do 1 for extra credit. And they're going to go, extra credit. They love extra credit. They will do more work for extra credit than they will actually do in class. They perceive extra credit as fun. I don't know why. But all these things are giving them, right? And they can choose. It gives them the power to decide. They can work with their strengths. Now, you still want to make sure that you're at least hitting the modalities, or you're at least hitting the domains. They may not hit all 4, but are you hitting 3? Right? But like 9 different ways you can do the same thing. And again, you're giving the power to the kids to make the decision. Now, this is not something that you can do for every single assignment. I get that. But this would be an assessment. It could be an assessment for a particular lesson. Okay? It could be as big as you want. We'll call it there. We'll come back to this next class. We'll get into scaffolding. Questions? My dog and pony show up here.
So, next week, discussion board?
Discussion board. Yes, I think that's all the next week.
Lesson 4 is not due next week.
No, lesson 4 is the 23rd.
Yeah, you have like 3 weeks because of the way it fell. Yeah. But
That's the last lesson.
yeah, lesson 4 is due on the 23rd, and then I guess the presentation's not till the 7th. I was thinking, and then the presentation's right around the corner, but you still have 2 weeks. Everything has like 2 weeks in between, right? Yeah.
Do we need to upload that literature review online?
Did you turn it in?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Okay.
I've got it. And I did intergrades today. I cannot, I don't know, for whatever reason, I can't get on the VPN from school, and I could not get my Newman account to open from home. So I always think I'm going to go home and do all this stuff on the weekend, and then I can't access stuff.
VPN for the Newman account?
No,
Oh,
just
okay.
this. I was going to enter grades and stuff for school, and then I had the stuff for you guys. No, it's not VPN. I just, for whatever reason, my internet, I don't know, it's just slow.
We don't judge you for it.
I sat up here at the Project Grad garage sale and was helping out while sitting and doing all of the work. Because I only do things up here.
I can do things at home a lot. When I'm here, I get distracted by shiny objects. I will start reorganizing bookshelves. I'll be like, oh my gosh, look at that, it's crooked.
Or you go talk to your neighbor.
Oh yeah, I stand out and talk in the hall.
That's not, I'm good.